3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey everybody, welcome back to another week of the Let's Dig In podcast. I am your host, Chef Rich Rosendale, joined by my co-host, Ian Navaro, who brings a wealth of industry knowledge and some great questions to the show. And today, listeners, we have the extraordinary treat of honoring and welcoming Chef Francisco Migoya to the show. Francisco is not only a titan in the world of baking and culinary innovation in his time at Modernist Cuisine, but he's also stepping into a new groundbreaking role alongside none other than René Redzepi at the legendary Noma restaurant. Of course, he's going to be taking on new roles there as Noma is going through its own evolution, which we're going to be talking to him about. This appointment marks a thrilling new chapter of Francisco's career, promising to push the boundaries of what's possible in culinary arts. We delve into the journey that led Francisco to this moment, exploring his philosophy on food, innovation, and the exciting potential of his collaboration with Chef René. And expect to hear about the challenges and triumphs, the insights gained from his years pushing the envelope, and what Francisco envisions for the future of fine dining. It was a great conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. And of course, a heartfelt thank you goes out to our sponsors who make the podcast possible. Ovention Ovens, Dry Ager, Mila, Waring Commercial. Your support helps us bring this episode and many of the stories to life. Thank you for sharing your innovation and passion of food with all of the culinary enthusiasts out there. So without further ado, let's dig in with Francisco Migoya. Welcome back for another episode of the Let's Dig In podcast. I'm your host, Chef Rich Rosendale, and joined by our co-host, Ian Navaro. And we have a super special guest on this episode. I think we're like episode number 53 or so, but very excited. I just saw Chef Francisco Migoya out at Chef's Roll just like a few months ago. We were both presenting out there. Loved his pizza presentation. But what really kind of prompted the one to kind of jump on a call with him is the really exciting, I mean, as if, you know, there's not already so many things that you've accomplished in your career that really would be a milestone for anyone. You've seemed to have, one thing after another. And I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a background of where you're at now and the position that you're getting ready to take. And then, of course, we want to talk with you about some of the different details. But for people that don't know, the Modernist Cuisine Project is a comprehensive endeavor initiated by Nathan Myhrvold, Chris Young, Maxime Belay, aimed at revolutionizing the way that people understand, prepare, and appreciate food. It's best known through its publication, Modernist Cuisine, The Art of Science and Cooking, which first released in 2011. Huge, amazing book when it first came out. No one's ever seen anything like it. The 6-volume work was a landmark in culinary literature, blending scientific research and culinary arts with stunning photography to explore the science behind traditional and modern cooking techniques. And we are fortunate enough here today to be able to talk with their current head chef, but that's only for a short time because you're getting ready to go to one of the most important restaurants in the world, top restaurant, Noma, with René Redzepi. I was telling Ian Francisco before we got on the call, I was like, man, how do you even explain that to people or compare? It's like, I was saying, it's almost like you're working at NASA and Elon Musk calls you to take on a new project. It's like, where do you go from Modernist? But I guess, that would be one of probably the only places, I guess, that would be an option. So congratulations and thank you in your busy schedule for spending some time with us today. So yeah, just tell us if you can maybe just give us a little bit of I guess kind of what things are like right now for you.
Well, first of all, thanks for that introduction. Pleasure talking with you. I just think that there's a good sort of rapport that we have here because of just the circles in which we move and people we know and whatnot. So it's good to have a conversation with you about these things specifically. But currently, You put it really well. I think that right now, as I'm about to end my job here at Martin's Cuisine, start my new job literally a month from today, March 6th,
Wow.
at Noma in Copenhagen. It was not an easy decision by any sense of the imagination. I think that I was, it's one of those phone calls that you get once in a lifetime, right? I think that that's the way I saw it. I saw it as, the whatever you believe in, right? But let's say the universe puts out these like things that are opportunities, and you either decide to take them or you don't. But it's not like they're going to come all the time. It's not like either René is going to wait for me, 5 more years until this current book is done, when I'm good and ready to move on. And so you have to sort of seize that opportunity, and the timing is never good. It is never worked out in that way. And it was something similar happened when I started working here. And I was thinking about this, amongst many things, was that when I started working here, it's 10 years this past January 13th, it's my 10-year anniversary here.
Wow.
I was still a professor at the Culinary Institute of America, and I had opened my chocolate shop. Was running a chocolate shop at the same time. So these were long days. These were like 20-hour days, which I would work at the CIA in the morning, and then I would go work on my chocolate shop. And so the plan was that eventually I would, when the shop was profitable enough, I could leave my job at the CIA and dedicate myself fully to it. But, after a year after I opened, I got a phone call from Martin's Cuisine. It was the same thing. I thought, how many times has Nathan Mirabel been called? Obviously, this is a take it or leave it, but it's an important decision to make. So I thought, I can always open a chocolate shop later. It's something I can eventually do. That's not something that requires these other stars to align to happen. So then I closed my chocolate shop and I took my job at the CIA to come work here. And so there's a lot of parallels with this current opportunity to work at Noma, which is, I don't know who else could have called that I would have said, it's worth it for me to leave my job here to go, on this project, right? I think very few people in the world that I can think of that I would even consider doing that, because my job here is perfectly fine. There's nothing, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think the only thing would be that, once you reach a milestone like 10 years anywhere, you do start thinking about
Right.
what does that mean as a professional? Am I going to be the guy that's, I'm really good at working at Martin's Cuisine and that's it? Because then there's the age thing, right? Which is you reach a certain age. How many years do you have in you to do things like go work at a 3 Michelin star restaurant, right? A lot of people say it's a young person's game. And so in my opinion, I feel like if I wait any longer, I don't know, even if this opportunity came, do I still have the ability to pull it off, right? So this is the long form of saying that it was not an easy decision. Let me put it this way. It was easy and it was difficult at the same time.
Right.
Because there was almost like no doubt in my mind that I was going to do it, but the question is how. So now I've crossed that bridge and I'm getting to the how. And there's a lot that's going to happen between now and starting, but I've known that I was going to take this decision since last summer. So
Wow.
there's been a lot of planning coming into place for this.
Well, and also I feel like for Noma, for René, there's really not with the innovation and all the things that they're always pushing forward toward, there's really nobody else really with your kind of MO, with your background. I mean, the modernist is like such a different animal than any kind of restaurant environment. And I find it really fascinating from like a recruiting talent and building a great organization, and finding the right people for, what that initiative is with their restaurant company. And there's probably not really anybody else that really is going to bring the toolbox that you kind of bring with your repertoire. because the things that you did at Modernist is just nobody does that. Nobody gets to do that. You know, they wait till the book comes out and then you just look through it. But I think you probably have a unique insight that prompts probably different questions about flavors and about techniques that somebody more traditionally trained would approach it. How has this experience at Modernist particularly? Because I know you worked at French Laundry and born in Mexico City. You obviously having the culinary education component. But how is like all of those kind of shaped where you're at now with your culinary philosophy?
I think that the most important thing I believe has been to have an immense curiosity of how things work and how things can be made better. And I feel that there's many different ways or paths to take in order to become very good at something. Because I feel like that's the goal, right? I mean, I feel like whatever you do, you should aim for that. Right? It might be arrogant to want to be the best, but at least to want to be very good at what you do. And I found that a lot of the answers to that were in understanding how things work. And it's the science is a big answer to your question because I'm not a scientist by any extent, and I would never claim to have that sort of education. A lot of it had to do with curiosity of how can I make X, Y, or Z thing better, faster, more efficient. And the answer is in a lot of these books that are really dense books. So to give you an example, I had this obsession years ago, I still do, of making the perfect eclair, which once you see an eclair like the ones I've seen that inspired me to do this, then I thought I have to be able to make this. I have to be able to get to the point where I can execute at this really high level. But the answer to that is not in any book of any pastry book. It's not in any sort of like Instagram post. It's in digging deep into how ingredient functionality works. So you have to sort of like train yourself to understand all of this literature and understand words that are new in reality, because science has almost a language in its own. And so that was basically the process for me, was that I was at the French Laundry as an executive pastry chef, and I know personally I used to do things, the recipes I used to execute were just recipes, perhaps with not even an understanding of why things were happening, or if there was a mistake, if the creme brulees didn't set, or they're not as creamy, how do we make them creamier? Like, it was just a recipe that we follow almost blindly and do it because that's the way I was taught. And I always knew that perhaps there was a way to make things better, but who has the time to
Right.
R&D when you're already working 60 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. It's just you have to continue executing. So when I transitioned from working at the French Laundry to working at the Culinary Institute of America, there was an opportunity there to finally have like a comprehensive view of how things work. You'll be surprised how much you learn by teaching, right? I mean, I think there's a saying like that. So it's that one of the best ways to learn how to do something is to teach it. And had 8 years of the privilege of being able to teach young minds and come up having them come up with questions I never would have even thought of asking, and finding the answers to those things really helped with forming me, and in that same way forming these young students and trying to explain to them how things work. And the problem is that sometimes the way things are classically taught are wrong. A lot of the very like old school classic techniques they're the result of an era. They're the result of how things used to be, how things used to work, how maybe refrigeration wasn't ideal. Maybe there was only gas heat. Ovens were awful. There were some pastry shops that didn't even have refrigeration. I mean, these are things that we're used to.
Right.
And so the the part of it is questioning, well, okay, this is how it was done 100 years ago. Do we still need to do it this way? Uh, and, those are things that really piqued my curiosity. And I wanted to find ways to, teach kids how to make a classic pastry cream, but also how you would do it if you understand ingredient functionality. How can I make a basic classic thing like pastry cream, but faster and better, delicious, right? Because for me, pastry cream, the way it is, it's like wallpaper paste. And it's just not delicious. We have to teach it. You have to know how to do it, and it's something that is your foundational skills. But what if you can make it delicious and faster, right? These are things that are sort of like the holy grail of, the backbone of pastry. So those are the things that I wanted to do as far as being an educator, but also as somebody who wanted to know how to do this, right? How to pull out the best spectacular. Those things still to this day interest me. I mean, it's something that I don't think you ever get to a point where you're like done. And there's nothing more or less. As you get to that point, it's a mistake. You will never. If you think you did, I have news for you. There's always better and faster and smarter ways to learning. Every few years, learn a new way to make how to shoot, a variation on how to laminate. Those things are part of why I love this profession and why it intrigues me. And it's sort of this whole like transition into like working at Noma, which is its own entity. It has its own philosophy. It's thinking, well, how am I? Because I don't want to 100% do what they've always done, right? Because what is the expectation? The expectation is, are we going to continue at Noma to do these, this particular style of dessert, this vision, or is there going to be some sort of adjustment there where it's like this infusion of like new ideas and
like an evolution almost.
Yeah, exactly. And how does it harmonize still with Noma, right? So it's a very tricky. I always find that the role of a pastry chef should be to how can he or she harmonize with the chef, right? How is this a seamless meal from start to finish? Where you go to some restaurants and the pastry chef has one style and the chef has another style entirely, and it doesn't have this like there's no
like a mismatch
symbiosis.
Almost.
There's a total mismatch.
Yeah.
Maybe the chef is a little more rustic and the pastry chef wants to like do all the fancy stuff, or vice versa, right? And so I think because most of the restaurants are guided by the main thing is the savory component, I feel like the pastry chef's job is to find a way to harmonize with it, and put its creative twist and its vision and whatnot, but it has to match. It has to make sense with that. So I am very excited about what that's going to mean because I have some ideas I've been thinking, like I said, for this last summer, spring about we're going to start working on the veg menu when I get there, which the season starts, I believe, in May. So I've been thinking already for over a year what are these desserts going to look like? Notebook. I always carry a notebook and I write my notes and ideas down there. And just to have like a preliminary understanding in my head, I'm trying to like rewire these synopses to start thinking in the Noma way, but with my way as well. Right. Like how do I bring these two worlds together? So I'm deeply curious about what that's going to look like. And I think the very important foundation here is that René is a great guy. I was worried, as you are with anybody who has that sort of notoriety, that sort of recognition. Is this person going to be an egomaniac, a tyrant? Are they just like impossible to talk to? I mean, but we've talked for hours and we've only had to finish our conversations because, it was either too late or we had been on the phone for too long. So I found that we had a really good rapport. We share a lot of, ideas and basic knowledge about inspiration, food, and creativity, and so forth. Um, so that was to me very important to see. Do we get along, right? Are we going to be able to have conversations about food without me being terrified of
Right.
or just not gelling, because those things can happen. And so I've had many conversations. I spent this past November, I spent a week there working in their test kitchen. It felt very natural, which was also something I was worried about. This commitment, moving to another country is a commitment of massive proportions. Uh, I'm selling my house here. There's a lot of things that I'm doing in order to get this to happen. So I had to make sure that those things were lined up. And so that is, just like a background of how, basically how all of that got me to this point.
And, I feel like from Renee's standpoint, where picking somebody, trying to recruit, talent, finding somebody like yourself, you have such a plethora of things that you can do, that you have done. I mean, obviously, even just on the topic of like pizza, just how
Mm-hmm.
people like, you don't even look in your mind's eye. You can't even imagine the different like considerations of the properties of an ingredient. And most other chefs, pastry chefs, to try to find somebody to take over and lead a pastry initiative in your organization, most people have to, wherever they're coming from, are playing in the sandbox, and they kind of form a style, and it's like their DNA is like, it's like the style of that restaurant or whatever, wherever, maybe it's where they're cooking. But I feel like with modernists, it's almost like, I mean, I guess I never would even thought to even look at a place like that, but I think it's really, I thought that was even really exciting. I mean, I think both of you kind of coming together, I thought it was like a really exciting news. Like whenever I saw it on social media when you posted, I was like, wow, this is like, I was excited for you. I'm excited for just to kind of follow the journey. But it's like, yeah, how do you get ready for something like that? It's not like you're going. It's a different preparation than when you were getting ready to go to the CIA or even the French
Right.
Laundry. This is a very different, kind of restaurant. And I just think it's just such an exciting time for you.
For sure.
There's so many of us that experience this critical points in our life where we're presented with a new opportunity, right? Like you got presented, you said in the summer. What were those evaluation points for you as a professional to say, I've got to take this leap, right? Sometimes you're searching for an opportunity, and other times opportunities come to you. But what were those things that kind of drew you into this opportunity that compelled you to say, I'm interested, this is enough to like make me want to pursue this more and more? And what advice do you have for other people out there that are in that same position at a crossroad of, man, I want to improve myself professionally, and this is that next step. What was your mindset like going through that?
I like that question because it is something that I think a lot of people will sort of find themselves asking themselves and throughout their careers or lives. And I'll answer to the best of my abilities. I would say that, first and foremost, a couple of years ago when I had, mentally acknowledged that it's going to hit 10 years here at Modernist Cuisine, I wrote two massive books, and I asked myself, okay, well, what does that mean? Who are you going to become if you stay here long? And the answer is not, it's not a terrible answer. It's not something awful. You become, a bona fide author of numerous multi-volume books. But in the back of my mind, I was like, well, is there is there something else I can do? Is there another, challenge that I could be interested in that would enrich me professionally and personally? Because I think those two things, at least for me, go hand in hand. I think, not to sidetrack too much here, but I do identify as my job. I mean, that is an identifier to me. Perhaps if I was in a different career, I would look at it differently, but I do fully identify as a pastry chef. So with that understanding, if that's who you are, and then you're writing books, are you more a pastry chef or are you more an author? Or are you just, sometimes when I have to fill out forms that they ask what do you do for a living, I have to think, am I a chef or am I an author? Or am I both? What am I? Right? So it's like this sort of like existential crisis. And so I was not looking. I was not looking at all because I thought, where the heck else am I going to work? Am I, going to go work for? Is there another R&D kitchen like Martin's Cuisine? The answer is no. There is no place like Martin's Cuisine, hands down. Do I, want to go back to working in restaurants? Do I want to start my own business? So all of those things were like floating around my head, but I thought, I'm not going to look for anything. I feel like in my life, I've learned that the best opportunities come when you're not looking. And I feel like when you're looking, at like, say, a job, it's understandable. Sometimes you have to do that. If you need a job, you have to do it that way. But those have not been, in my opinion, in my experience, the best opportunities or the best results. I would say, like the first job I got when I moved to New York City. I moved to New York City in 1998, and I started working at this restaurant. I won't name it because it still exists, but it was a job I had found in a newspaper ad. And 2 weeks in, I was just the most miserable person in the world. I mean, it was just like I dreaded it, going there every day. It was just a nightmare. But then one of the cooks there said, "Hey, they're looking for a pastry cook at the River Cafe in Brooklyn. You should send your resume." And I was working the line at this point. I was not looking at pastry, but I thought, that's not a bad idea. And that was what got me into pastry. And to put my foot in the pastry door. That was an opportunity that if I hadn't had this miserable job for 2 weeks, I don't know if I would be where I am. And so that's why again that it wasn't a something I necessarily sought. But my point here is that you have to also be open to those things happening to you, right? And to have your eyes open and your ears peeled and talk to people. Because that's how these things happen, right? If you just like hunker down and you just isolate yourself from our world, from the world of gastronomy, people are not even going to know you exist. You're not going to be on their radar, And I think that part of it is, I hate to use the word networking because I'm not like a networking guy. It's not like I go to events and hand out my cards. But I feel like the work that I've done is where people know who I am, at least in our industry. So that creates opportunities, right? I feel like if I would have searched for something, I don't know that it would have turned out like I would have never thought to ask René, who's looking for pastry chef. That would have not been something that I would have considered something based on reality. So I was patient, and the one thing that did work out well for this is that my daughter started going to college last August. And so with her out of the house, it makes things a little more easy in a way to do these shifts. Because she was younger and I had to put her in high school in Copenhagen. She didn't know the language. This makes things a lot harder, right? So this was another thing that sort of like made it seem like, okay, well, this is doable. This is something that I could do. So, so that's, but my answer is like, searching for those things is one way to do it. But I think that if you're open to like listening to opportunities and talking to people, sometimes those things sort of just conspire to happen in your life. And I don't want to get too esoteric here because it's not based on that. It's based on, how does luck happen? Luck happens while you're working. It happens when you're busy doing things, and that's how luck happens because it's opportunities that you create based on how you put yourself out there and who you know and who you're talking to and who is aware of you. I find those things to be extremely valuable because it's you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. If that's something you don't like to do, and if it's something that you're very shy about, it's understandable. There's so many people who promote themselves who are not really very good at all cooking, but they get great opportunities. We could name dozens of people that are famous, popular, you name it, maybe not very good chefs, right? But they have some sort of charisma, personality that people like, and so they do take advantage of these opportunities. There's so much talent hidden in our kitchens that it just doesn't want to deal with getting uncomfortable, getting uncomfortable. So yes, those opportunities come when you're not looking. Is how I've experienced.
Francisco, you kind of talked even about your time even as an educator, and I agree. Like when I was at the Greenbrier, I was like the lead chef of their apprenticeship program, and ironically, even though I was kind of the one that was supposed to be the guiding, leading chef, I feel like I kind of learned more in that process than everyone else around me, and I feel like I can see that in your experience as well. It's almost like you kind of put yourself in a position where the expectation is, well, I'm going to go to chef here, he's going to know, and you have to kind of really know everything. Has that experience even from working with like young people and the teaching component, I'm kind of curious, like, do you see that like being applicable? Because I know like with René, it's also some of the things that they've been doing is also just with the culture that they're building there. I mean, if you're taking a new position, a lot of times it might be like, well, what are the new things that I'm going to be putting on the menu? But would you say that your thought about your contributions and evolving, the restaurant, the pastries, of course, but I mean, is it a bigger consideration? I mean, do you think more about ideas other than just dishes? And are there some of your past experiences that like the kind of environment that you want the kitchen to kind of feel like? Like what are some of the things that you're kind of thinking about that you are excited about? Is it more researching, Nordic ingredients, or is it kind of more global? I mean, like where do you even begin when it's not like you're going to a classic French
Right.
restaurant or Italian restaurant. I mean, it's just such a it's profound. But how do you prepare yourself, and how will you kind of tie in some of that past experience?
I think the first thing is that it's important to tread carefully. Right? I feel like there is a culture in place. And it's evolving. And I think that it's important to understand that the way René was 20 years ago is not the same as he is now. I think he has evolved as a chef, and so has the culture. I think that what was very important for me was to see. When I did want to go and work there. See the environment. It was sort of like not quite a first date, but it was like let's see how we
See the
get along.
chemistry and
Yeah, right.
environment. Yeah.
Because what I wanted to see, the thing that was very important to me, and it's something that you can see almost immediately when you enter the kitchen, is do these cooks respect? Do they fear them? Fear question, right? There's, some people confuse both, but one is very clear. When your
Right.
chef, your cooks respect you, it's a different vibe. I was very happy to see that, they really respect him. I don't want to say love him, but if you want to use that term between cooks and chef, they implicitly have the deepest respect. And you can't buy that. That's not something that I can achieve. And I will tell you too that he had my respect way before that. When I was a pastry chef at the French Laundry, he had just opened. He opened it
Wow.
20 years ago. So 2003 he opened it. So I guess it's going to be 21 years this year. But he opened it 2004. I was full on executive head chef at French Laundry. And I remember seeing this guy, Stasha. And so Renee had closed his restaurant either for summer vacation or what. And instead of just taking a vacation, came to the French Laundry to do a stash as the chef, owner of Noma. And I remember thinking at that point, I thought I had worked at it. This guy is invested in becoming the best chef or an extraordinary chef.
Wow.
Amazing. He doesn't remember me because I was one face amongst, many faces. And he was there for a few weeks. But from that moment, I remember thinking, this guy is something. And, eventually started hearing from him and whatnot. So I think that when I joined this team, like I said, I don't want to disrupt, at least not negatively. I don't want to become an agent of chaos by any means. But what I do see is that there is a desire that Renee has to become very serious about the pastry dessert side of the restaurant. Not to say that they haven't before. They've had very talented people in the pastry realm. But I think the way Renee sees it is like, if you follow soccer, it's called Champions League. And that's the example he gave. He says, we're playing in the Champions League here, and I want people like you, and as well as the rest of my team, to be at a certain level. And so he says, I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know. I know you need to be here, but you're going to learn how it is that you're going to influence what we do here at Noma on a day-to-day basis. And this is a very interesting and great way to look at it, because the fact that it's not entirely defined. I mean, there is a job description, but he's thinking of, how is Noma going to evolve in that realm? What is
Right.
desserts, right? Because as you know, the restaurant as it is right now, it's going to close, and I have to be very clear about this. A lot of people are, they made the announcement that it's going to Noma. We're like, well, isn't the restaurant closing? And I think that they need to, the restaurant needs to, I guess, clarify the language they're using, because it's not closing forever. The idea is that Noma will continue to exist as pop-ups around the world. And it will open in its location whenever Renee feels like there's a menu that needs to be shared with the world, then it's going to open. So it's not closing forever. It's just not going to be a 365-day-a-year restaurant. So what happens in that downtime? There's something that's called Noma projects, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's retail and Noma. So they're producing all these very interesting garums and vinegars and condiments that they sell retail. So I'm going to be participating in that as well. And so we'll see. I mean, I think that what Renee has this understanding that it's, my knowledge is not just pastry. It has to do with like a bunch of other things, which is like chocolate confections, pizza, bread. So I feel like there's other areas of the company that I can be a part of, because they also own a bakery. They have Hart Bakery, Copenhagen. Richard Hart, who used to be Sam Robertson's baker 13 years ago. So, the company is more than one restaurant. It's got a bunch of restaurants in Copenhagen. So we'll see what that means. We'll see what, where I land, what I do a year from now, 2 years from now. It's going to evolve. Is the way I see it. It's exciting. It's scary too. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm entirely confident that everything's going to be perfectly well, because it's a huge gamble for them, but also for me, because I feel like, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out with me, Noma won't end. It's not like their future depends on me. But if it doesn't work out for me, I made a huge commitment,
Right.
financial, personal, to form part of this team. So, I'm taking this so seriously that I'm doing all of these things to get there. But, there's a chance that, I don't even want to think about it, but there's a chance it won't work out, right?
Right.
And so what does that look like? So I haven't really had too much time to think about that, but it's not impossible that something like that could happen, right? And I need to, make peace with the fact that it's, I'm going all in, and sometimes things don't work out. But I'm really hoping that this is successful.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because I feel like a lot of people, especially younger people earlier on in like the runway of their career, sometimes people are always waiting for the conditions to be just right or perfect, or maybe they're looking for something, and as you mentioned, sometimes things find you. That there's gonna be always a little risk. I mean, you've had this amazing trajectory in your career, but at each one of those phases, there were really never any guarantees. I mean, it's just you go into it and you put your best foot forward. I do feel like the curiosity with you, I feel like there's also, I could see like with René, that probably has also fueled a lot of his growth and evolution over the years, just not settling for, hey, this is good enough. It's like you want to turn rocks over and ask the why. One thing I'm really curious about that I wanted to kind of, because I know we're coming up on an hour here, but I wanted to, with just kind of see what your thoughts were. Does this play a role in culinary arts? I mean, we know that it does in the industry, but I'm curious, like, because it's a little bit of a double-edged sword with technology, with like AI and robotics. There's the new Apple Vision Pros and stuff like that. Have you have you like do you see like, hey, how does this get incorporated into some of our R&D or some of our experiences? I'm just kind of curious as to like what, you see an article pop up on something, is it, because everybody, it's a little controversial, as you know, like with some of the AI and the robotics and stuff like that. But I don't know, even at the very highest levels of cuisine and experiences, does it play a role, or maybe not as much?
Well, it's a good question, because we're now facing this new technology, and we're wondering how is it going to affect the world, and how is it going to affect our, what we do. I feel like there's a lot of big question marks there. And if it's in hands of bad actors, it's always going to be bad, right? That's always going. But there's if you compare it to, let's say, in the early 1900s, where you look at paintings in the 1900s. Paintings in the 1900s were realistic. Right? For the most part, it's realistic. Why? Because it was meant to depict something. It was meant to show a scene of whatever it was, right? Either people at a picnic table or a church or what have you. But then photography comes along, and it pissed off a bunch of things, because they're like, well, that's what we're supposed to be doing. What are we going to do now? And so that created these other movements in our future, like abstractionism, modernism, cubism, all of these other realms that would not have existed had photography not. So we can look at it from a positive perspective, that utilizing the onset of AI is going to have that sort of influence, right? Do people use photography for, nefarious purposes? Yes. I mean, that happens. But also, photography has helped us document our lives. It has had all these positive things for in our life. We can write books, and we can, do step-by-step photography, and it can show us the world. Right? So I think, looking at it from that perspective, we're afraid of this new technology. I'm going to continue talking about photographers because it's a good example. When Photoshop first came to be in the 1990s, photographers were like, use Photoshop for cheating. It's not real photography. That's blah, 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 blah. And now every single photographer uses Photoshop. It's status quo, and nobody frowns down upon it, right? And, it also gives the ability of people like me who are not photographers to make good pictures, to take good pictures and, call them professional quality. Well, so it's a tool. And I think that if it's used as a tool, used wisely, it can help. Say, for example, the way that I could see it working is, I upload my menu to ChatGPT. And I can ask it, okay, well, can you look over this menu, tell me if there's something in season I should be using or not using, or tell me, is a wording right? What order would you put this in? That would make more sense for if I'm trying to sell more of this item than that item. What order should I put this in? So I think that there's questions we can ask as to, how this AI can help us, right? If I have a question about, what is the ideal time for steaming asparagus? I mean, you can find that online anywhere. But also, AI has the ability to sort of like take that information and explain it to you in a way that you can understand. Where it could be tricky is, it's in its infancy, right? So if you ask it, what flavors combine well with, I don't know, passion fruit, where is it getting those answers from? Like, you may or may not disagree. I don't know if there was a pastry chef, not too well, maybe about a decade ago, who had a dessert. His name was Robert Truitt. He had a dessert that was combined basically passion fruit and blue cheese, and you would have never thought that worked. That's not something a robot or AI can tell you is going to work, but a human being put those together and it actually worked beautifully. So I think that there's still going to be that human element
right,
when it comes to those things. But, I would say that when I was first starting out, one of the hardest things that I had struggled with was flavor pairing, flavor combination, what things go with what. And which is why when I wrote my book, It's a Dessert, I like this whole guide of flavors that I think are successful. But, at this point in time, you don't have to buy the book to do that. You can just, there really that resource exists. I have these ingredients. What can harmonize with this? And ultimately, you decide whether it does or does not, right? I mean, these are things that you can choose to take that information or ignore. But I feel like, I don't think we should be afraid of it. I think what we should do is think of ways that it can serve us, because at the end of the day, it's a tool that is there to serve humanity, right? The part where it's like, utilizing known art and utilizing it to create, art, I don't think that's very good form. I think that is a form of stealing. But that's not my world. That's not something I'm really looking at. It's unfair to artists, I suppose. But in the realm of what we do, in the realm of gastronomy, I think it could be very useful for answering questions on the spot.
Yeah, I'm always curious about that stuff because I remember, just years ago, whenever I was, fine dining chef, and I thought like, okay, well, this was, I had just come back from staging at like Robuchon and Alain Ducasse, and at that time, a lot of the really, icons of the industry in fine dining, and I was like, man, where it's like cuisine is like it's like it can't go any further. And then like El Bulli kind of comes along with all these different,
Disrupt,
and I was like,
total
what the
disruption. Yeah.
hell? It's like a whole new ball game now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just, with how profound like some of the technology questions and complicated because they are, you just kind of wonder, when people just sometimes it's just as you mentioned, curiosity, just asking a different question
Mm-hmm.
can send you in a very different direction that no one ever could have seen in their mind's eye. But it all just starts with that curiosity.
Right.
Awesome,
This is
man.
this is a question maybe for both of you is, and Francisco, you had a great quote, luck happens when you are busy doing things. If you're a young professional aspiring for more in your career, how do you advance yourself in today's world, right? You talked about when you
Right.
started in 2003 or when you moved in 1998 to New York, times have changed in the way that we look for jobs and the way that we invest in ourselves. Like what what can someone do today to really elevate themselves and accelerate them to get to the next level and have things come to you? I agree. I think things come to you if you're searching for a job. You're applying with the 200 other people, and it's tough to stand out. And if you create that luck for yourself through hard work, like what what can people do right now to really sharpen their skills?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot because I've been asked that question. And I think that there's a few things here that are actionable things that people can do. Maybe they don't want to hear them, but they're actionable things that you can actually do. The first thing is shoot for the stars. Who do you want to work with? Who is the person that you've seen that has inspired you or influenced you or done things that you want to learn from? And reaching out never killed anybody. And if you don't succeed the first time, try somebody else in the organization, right? Because let's say, I was always this fervent admirer of Michel Bras. I know that if I tried to, call him, he would have never picked up. So I need to sort of find out who I need to get my message to in order for them to allow me to work in their restaurant. So that's the first, is that you need to think about who is this person that is interesting to you, that you think you want to hang with. The second is that you have to be willing to work hard. And there's no cheat sheet there. There's no shortcut to that. There's no magic potion. There's no drink you could take. ChatGPT is not going to solve this for you. You have to work. And, I would say that, working hard is one term, but I would say it has negative connotations. If working more than 8 hours is a burden to you, you're probably not doing what you like to do, right? I mean, this is probably not for you. If a restaurant comes up with a formula where, they have 3 Michelin stars and everybody works, 7.5 hours a day and has a 30-minute meal break, wow. They've solved it. They've solved it for everybody, and they should market it and franchise that idea because they're going to make a lot of money. But the current climate is this whole, which I get, kitchens need to be less toxic environments, a lot less. But who gets the most opportunities is the person who just does most of the work. That's just the way it is, because you're learning more, because you're more involved, because you're doing more things. You become more important to your company because you contribute more. That's just basic, economics. But also there's this, I've noticed in my career that there's people who work hard, right? They work 12, 14 hours a day. But sometimes they work hard because they're not very efficient, right? And so there's sort of a sweet spot between, I used to work for the chef who said, whenever I want to figure out a fast and easy way to do something, I ask the laziest person on my staff how they would do it. Because if it has to get done, how would this person do it? Like, they have to do it. They're super lazy, but it has to get done. How would they do it? And somebody who's programmed to just work however many hours is necessary to do something might take 5 hours to do a task versus 45 minutes, right? So I would say that we need to clarify what working hard means, right? And we're working, as efficiently as possible for longer periods of time, right? So there's sort of like an X and Y axis that has to meet at some point where it's like you're working really hard, but you could have done your work at half the time, right? So those are things that are important to look at. It's like, who are you? Are you a hard worker, or are you a worker that contributes? So those are a couple of things that people don't necessarily want to hear, that you're going to have to work more than 8 hours a day. And maybe if you're in, I don't want to, shame any country or state, but there are places where you have restaurants that are at a higher level than maybe in a suburban town in Florida, right? And so you have to make some sacrifices to get to that. And there's a time where you can do those sacrifices. I think that time is between 18 and 20 is your prime to be able to do those things, to live in a very uncomfortable place with 10 roommates, and but it's an investment. And I think that a lot of kids, they lose hope at some point and give up, and they either change careers drastically or they go for a gig that pays more, but in the long term it's a dead end job. It happens a lot with pastry cooks, a lot, that they graduate from culinary school or pastry school. And there are so many restaurants that are short staffed with pastry that they'll hire this kid and they have the title of pastry chef, and it's maybe a little bit more money than if you're a pastry cook. You get used to that money, and then it's very hard to take a step back after that. It's very hard to make less money so that you can learn from somebody else. And so you need to play your cards right, which is to understand and embrace the suck of the first 8 years of your career, 9, maybe 10, but it will pay off. I mean, there's no easy path to it, and I feel like every career is the same way. It's adapting yourself to embrace those years of difficulty, and the reward is going to come later. It's very rarely going to come in the first year or two of it. That's just the way it is. And in our careers, it's a little bit harder because there's less money. But the ones that stick it out have made it through, live pretty decently, have a pretty good living, and it can happen. It's having that sort of like stamina to get through those years. I don't want to lie and say, it'll be easy, anybody can do it, because if that was the case, there would have been 10 candidates for my position, but there weren't. So that's just the way things.
Yeah, and I would just to add to that, I think also just to sometimes when you're a young cook, you're looking at other people, maybe your peers, or other people maybe you went to school with or whatever, and sometimes that can you kind of become your own worst enemy. You kind of become stifled with making decisions because you're kind of busy looking at other people's success, and it's like everybody's on their own journey, and it's like try to surround yourself with people that inspire you, and as Francisco said, find a place that is going to lift you up, and the goal is to get better, and the way you're going to get better is to put yourself in environments where you got a lot of talent, and that'll lift you. So well, Francisco, this was, man, awesome. Really so much good stuff here. And again, can't thank you enough for spending some time in what is really exciting, man. I'm excited to, even for Noma as well, just to kind of follow the exciting things that you're going to be part of. So congratulations. And anything we can ever do, don't hesitate to reach out. Really enjoyed your presentation out at Chef's Roll, and thoroughly enjoyed spending time with you today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to speak with both of you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. All the best with your move.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Hey, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Francisco Migoya. We want to wish him the best of luck in this exciting new chapter of his career, exciting career, that is. And also, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to the show. And also check out all of our sponsors. They have been fantastic. A lot of the items that we use are things that I actually use day to day in our culinary operations and in my home kitchen. So they are all battle tested and just top-notch products that we work with. And also, if you want to see the video version of the episodes, you can go to YouTube at Rosendale Collective, and there you can not only listen, but watch the episodes. So until our next episode, thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.